Hello and welcome to Your Favourite Teacher. Today we're going to take a look at identity as a theme and how we can apply it to 3 different poems from the Power and Conflict cluster. Identity is quite a broad topic, but the main poems that fit this theme are about people who identify as a certain type of person or how humans are identified by others. Firstly, let's look at Tissue by Imtiaz Darka, a poem that students up and down the country dread seeing in front of them when they open their exam papers. I promise it's really not that bad. Darka's poetry is usually linked to themes such as religion, terrorism, global politics, and identity. In a nutshell, Tissue is about how nothing is meant to last, and that as humans we should stop letting certain things that won't last control our lives. The first stanza talks about the Quran and notes where a hand has written in names and histories who was born and to whom. This emphasises history as a form of control. As humans, we look to recordings of the past to identify who we are as individuals, and on a wider scale as members of different religions. The reader is left to decide whether this is a good thing or a bad thing for us to do. Later, Darka moves on to maps and how the sun shines through their borderlines, which implies that we're controlled by points on a map to separate different countries and races, but in reality, all we can see are lines on a piece of paper controlling who we are and where we're from. As humans, we're controlled by maps. Towards the end of the poem, Darka also makes reference to money and how we allow it to control us as humans. The more money we have, the higher our status, for example. Darka notes how it might fly our lives like paper kites. This simile connotes a childlike innocence and ease, suggesting if we change how we see material ownership, we might regain that sense of ease that children have. In contrast, we have John Agard's Checking Out Me History, which tackles the lack of identity he feels black and minority ethnic citizens have due to the government and the school curriculum. Visually, when you look at the poem, the black history we're not able to access in schools is written in italics, which adds emphasis to the importance of BAME citizens to be allowed to understand their identity and where they came from. In normal cursive, Agard seemingly mocks what we do learn in schools. At the start of the poem, Agard states, "Dem tell me what dem want to tell me," with dem being used as a harsh, dismissive term to address the government and those in charge. This suggests Agard feels that some students in schools are left in an identity crisis because they aren't taught about their heritage. This is similar to Darka, who feels we follow those in power blindly and need to think more for ourselves. However, the two differ, where Darka explores the use of paper to control us and give us our identity, whereas Agard is speaking about how education controls our identity. At the end of the poem, Agard states, "I checking out me history, I carving out me identity," which shows that he is taking his education into his own hands and implying that others should do the same. By using the verb carving, Agard is expressing the need to create something which cannot be removed. A new start so that everyone is able to identify with their heritage in some way. Finally, we have Kamikaze, which again explores another strand of identity. Here, we have a kamikaze pilot on a suicide mission who gets cold feet and turns back, only to be stripped of his identity by his own family. The beginning of the poem starts off with very positive imagery. The pilot is confident and sure of his mission. We learn how he embarked at sunrise, with enough fuel for a one-way ticket into history. These phrases show he is sure of his identity. He knows what his mission is and he's happy to fulfill it. Ticket into History emphasises that others around him will also identify him as a brave pilot who sacrificed his own life for the benefit of his country. However, when he returned home alive, he was stripped of this identity. Although we identify as many different things, son or daughter, husband or wife, for example, he was even stripped of this because his family shut him out. And although he came back, my mother never spoke again in his presence. Here, the speaker has used he and his. Pronouns leave him nameless, as though she's ashamed or finds it difficult to name him. This effectively strips him of his identity, leaving the final lines as him pondering which would have been the better way to die. Each poem discussed in this video looks at identity in a slightly different way. Tissue looks at paper as a way of controlling your identity, whereas Checking Out Me History points out the identity crisis BAME citizens have when looking at the British education system. Kamikaze looks at the effects of a loss of identity. In all cases, identity is linked to some form of government control. I hope you found this video useful. Make sure you have a look at the other videos in the Power and Conflict series. I'm Miss Shaw, thanks for watching.